Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our unpacking NAPLAN results. Today joined by two of our college learning specialists. So Melissa Price, who is our literacy learning specialist, and Hiba Videra, who is our numeracy learning specialist. I just want to start today with our acknowledgement of country. So we begin today by acknowledging the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation, traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. We pay our respects to their elders past and present, and the continuation of cultural, spiritual and educational practices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. The reason behind our session today is to show you how we're using our NAPLAN results, but to show you how you can understand the NAPLAN results. And that all is underpinned by our college values, in particular, our commitment to excellence. So we want excellence for every student, every day in every lesson. And we think that that is a partnership or a three-way kind of relationship between us at school, you at home and your child. So by understanding those NAPLAN results, we're hoping that we can strengthen that for every student. So I'm going to hand over to both Hiba and Mel, who will run you through the rest of the presentation about understanding those NAPLAN results.
Thank you. Speaking about NAPLAN, NAPLAN has two components, numeracy and literacy. For numeracy, kids are tested on three main strands: number and algebra, measurement and geometry, and statistics and probability. For literacy, also students are tested on three main strands: reading, writing, and conventions of language, which is further split into two categories: spelling and grammar and punctuation. Sorry, excuse me. From 2023 onwards, the way in which the students are reported on the NAPLAN have changed a bit in terms of the proficiency levels. From this year onwards, instead of bands, they will have proficiency levels, and there are 4 proficiency levels, namely needing additional support, starting from bottom, developing, strong, and exceeding. If the students show the results in let's say needing additional support, that means at the time of testing, students indicates that they're not achieving the school outcomes, the learning outcomes. And if they are in the strong proficiency level, that means that the students are achieving the expected outcomes at the time of testing. And if they are in the exceeding proficiency level, that simply means that students are achieving the above expected outcomes at the time of testing. Now, if you see that green scale right next to the proficiency level scale, it shows where the students' levels are at. For example, the black dot in the circle shows where the students' results are at, whereas the light faded green color rectangular box shows where 60% of the students in Australia stand. Then there is this small triangle right outside the green scale, which shows where the national average of Year 7 students is at. Moving on, you would see that the changes are very positive from 2023 onwards, and that's because it's quite easy to interpret the results. From up until 2022, the results were displayed in terms of bands. And for me, for my child in year 5 getting band 9, I have no idea what band 9 means and what the skills that students have shown compared to this proficiency scale. Now, if my child is lying in strong proficiency level, I can easily interpret that the child is doing all right, even if I don't know the deeper context of what it actually means. From just by names itself, needing additional support, strong, exceeding, I can tell how my child is performing at the time of testing. Now, this is how your child's report look like. For numeracy, let's say little Johnny is little bit above the national average and lies in the strong proficiency level category. For reading, the child has performed again in the strong proficiency level, which means they are meeting the expected outcomes. For again writing, it's the same, but this time they are sitting above the national average and again showing this strong proficiency level. Similarly, for conventions of language, for both spelling, grammar, and punctuation, they are way above the national average. Next.
Okay, so on this, thanks, Hiba. On this next slide, we now show you, and you'll be able to see this on your child's NAPLAN report. You can see the proficiency scale, and you'll see from that it has these 4 new levels that Hiba's already told you a little bit about. We just ask you to remember that they're based on reasonable expectations of student achievement at the time of testing. So we always want to remember that NAPLAN is simply a snapshot of where the students were in March of this year. The judgment of what students in each level could achieve is collated along with the knowledge and the skills that they would have been expected to be taught at this time. That's how they actually come out with these proficiency levels. So in other words, what students at each level can typically demonstrate on each NAPLAN domain. So where they are with their numeracy, where they are with their reading, their writing, and their conventions of language. So that's all those bands mean, all those proficiency scales actually mean. So if we go to the next slide, you can see that you can actually use the proficiency scale to see a brief description of what a student can typically do, okay? So you can compare this with the level above, and that will actually help you to understand what your student might need to achieve in terms of growth to actually go up to the next level. So this one, we're just looking closely at the writing domain here, and we're looking at what the difference would be from the developing level as opposed to the strong level. What would a student need to be able to do to move up into the stronger level? So one thing that we can see from this brief description is that someone who is strong with their writing has shown a lot of growth around the level of organisation and the flow of their work. They're making very deliberate language choices in order to affect their audience. And look, although these are very brief descriptions, they still give you a little bit of an idea about what it is that the kids are typically achieving for each of those levels. Obviously, the data that we collect as teachers is very, very detailed. So you might be curious about what we do with the results. I mean, we know what you do with the results. If they're great, you're sticking those right on the fridge so everyone can see. And if they weren't so good, maybe they're getting hidden away in the junk drawer. But the results are really, really valuable to us. There's a lot of things that we can actually do with them. So one of the things is, and it's important to remember this, is that we compare the results against other data. So we're always remembering that NAPLAN is simply a snapshot. It's not the full story about each one of our students. And we collect data in many different ways, including every day, the formative data of what we're seeing students are doing in the classroom. We compare that with what they're doing, what achievements they get from their CATs or their SACs or their exams, and compare that again with PAT testing that we do at the end of every year, and compared again with NAPLAN. And we think when we look at all of those things, we get a much bigger picture. Obviously, we used a planned curriculum. NAPLAN helps us to identify students' strengths and weaknesses. And from those, we can work out what we need to teach and what the students need to learn. And the wonderful thing about NAPLAN is that we can do this at every level. We can make these decisions. We can see strengths and weaknesses in an individual student, right through to a group of students, to an entire year level, or indeed for the entire school. We also use the information for differentiating. How can we ensure that students are learning at their point of need? Some of our students we can see will need additional support. Other students who are exceeding will need to have more challenging work put in place for them. We use it to check that our supports are in place. We want to make sure that we're supporting our students to progress through the proficiency scale. We want to make sure that no one's falling through the cracks. Occasionally, we might get some results that surprise us, that might cause us to do further investigating. And making sure that we've got the right kids in our integration programs and like Boost and things like that are helping our kids who need additional support to actually access that. And I suppose if you could put it this way, what we do with the results is that they're used to plan for improvement. How do we get better at what we're doing and what we're offering our students? So if you want some further information, you can always contact Lauren, myself, Hiba, your child's classroom teacher, particularly for English and mathematics. They should be able to give you quite a detailed interpretation of your students' results. And we also want to remind you that learning conferences are coming up on the 6th of September, which would be an ideal time to come and check in and have a chat with the English and maths teachers, and particularly ask some good questions about how your kids have gone in NAPLAN. So I'd like to thank you very much for coming and joining us online, find out a little bit about NAPLAN, and we hope to see you at learning conferences.